Welcome back to the Voices of Long COVID podcast. I'm your host, Noelle. On each episode, I'll be featuring a different long COVID sufferer and sharing their story. We will learn about the strength and resilience of those who continue to persevere with this chronic condition that has drastically altered their lives. There are an estimated 400 million people suffering with long COVID worldwide. People say they don't know anyone with long COVID. Well, now you can say that you do. On this week's episode, I'm joined by Armani, who's from Raleigh, North Carolina. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You're here to share your story about your COVID infection and then reinfection, then the developing of long COVID, all this starting at the age of 28. So it's nice to get that perspective. Before we get into all of that, tell us, what was life like for you before your illness?
Yeah, so prior to this, I was a very fit individual. I had served in the United States Army for about 7.5 years as an officer. So I was a field artillery captain, and I was very active. A lot of running, hiking, weightlifting. I was able to meet the demands of that job. And then when I transitioned out from the military into consulting, I was doing fairly well in it, was able to utilize a lot of the skills that I had learned in the military in that industry. And frankly, everything was going quite well prior to developing long COVID.
Mm-hmm. So I imagine to get into the military, you have to do a lot of fitness testing and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so during my time in the military, you had to first compete to become an officer through various programs you can go through an academy or through a college, ROTC or whatnot. And then once you're in the military, I mean, fitness, especially as a leader, was a focal point of what made you competent. And so, I was physically fit in that regard throughout the entirety of my time in the service.
Right.
And I did maintain it after leaving the military. I was working out 6 times a week, going on 14-mile hikes with friends in, the Shenandoahs. And I was able to definitely meet up with a lot of my friends for like their personal milestones, getting married, having a kid, basically there were no like limitations on what I could and couldn't do. Besides, some maybe musculoskeletal injuries that I had sustained in the military, but those didn't limit me from, living life.
Right. You were very, very active. Yeah. And how did you get COVID and then go on to develop long COVID?
Yeah. So the first time I got COVID was in December 2021 timeframe. I was still in the military. We were still working in person. I used to have to like get on, very compact aircraft and vehicles or buildings or whatnot around a lot of people. So I got COVID, and I didn't know it at the time, but that's when I first developed a long COVID. So my initial infection was like pretty severe. It was like 103.5, fever, the fatigue, all that. After recovering, the only long COVID symptom I had for about 8 months was like a very pins and needle type feeling in my torso, kind of like if anybody's worked out, you take beta alanine, it's like that fire ant feeling all over. And so I didn't think much of it. It eventually went away 8 months in. So my initial like experience with long COVID wasn't very severe. Mm-hmm. Then, fast forward 2 years in August of 2023. Unfortunately, I got COVID again. This time, it surrounds like a time frame of a wedding for an old Army friend in Colorado. And so this time getting COVID, it felt like a cold. It wasn't that severe. I frankly thought I had a cold. And the only indication that it could be COVID was I got that itchy feeling back that I hadn't felt in about 1.5 years. Now, it kind of starts to escalate from there.
So sorry, did you test at that time?
Yes, I did.
You did,
I
and
did.
you tested
I tested
positive.
positive, yes.
Okay, yeah.
And I still have all that documentation for when I go, go to the
Yeah.
doctors and whatnot. But um, so basically, I got it, and it kind of went away for a little bit, but I started having these bouts of like breathlessness about a week after infection, and I attributed that to being in Colorado, higher elevation and whatnot.
Right.
Now, what was confusing to me was that I had been in Colorado 6 months prior, like snowboarding, and I had no issues breathing at all. And
Mm,
so I had these bouts, and I was like, well, I guess I'm still getting over my, you know, cold, right? Because at that time I thought it was a cold. And then I started feeling like a heaviness in my chest, and that kind of unnerved me. And eventually, I started having tachycardia instances, and my heart rate was just spiking between at rest, 70 to 155 uh,
at
at
rest.
rest, and that's like, doesn't feel great. Um, I thought maybe I had taken too much, Dayquil or Nyquil or something, or for the cold symptoms. And so I went to the ER down there in Colorado, and they did not COVID test me there. They pretty much said like, "Yep, you're probably having a reaction to medicine," and then they discharged me. And I believe them. What, like, who was I not to believe the doctors?
Yeah, question the doctors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it really took off from there. Like, I finished out the wedding, and I came back from Colorado to North Carolina, and I had thought that the breathlessness and the that weird feeling in my chest would go away when I was at normal altitude,
Right.
but it didn't. It got worse. So around August 16 of 2023, I went to the ER for the second time, and the first time here in Raleigh. And they pretty much looked at me and they were like, "Hey, you're like a veteran. You work a stressful job. Before you work a stressful job now. Could this be some sort of like PTSD or anxiety thing?" And I was like, "No, like I understand what it feels like to have anxiety. You know, this is not that, right?"
Hmm.
But nonetheless, they told me, "Hey, just take a few days off work. Maybe you're just having panic attacks." I was like, "All right, well, I guess I have panic attacks now." Or this is like a new way to have a panic
It's
attack.
really interesting to me because I've experienced the gaslighting, and thinking it was because I was an older female, right? And for you to experience that as well is that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
doesn't stop there. So, 4 days later on August 20th, so my birthday actually, I'm trying to celebrate my birthday, but I feel fatigue. I feel that weird heaviness in my chest. And then I had bouts of like heart rate increases that left me breathless, again to like the 150s. And I was just like, I guess I'm having a panic attack or whatever they call it. Let me try to like calm myself down. But it
Hmm.
didn't really stop. But like a lot of other things in my life, I've been uncomfortable plenty, so I pushed through it. And the next day, August 21st, is where it all goes downhill. So I was waiting to leave my apartment to go on a train ride to go visit another one of my army buddies in DC. And an hour before I was going to get on the train, I was just sitting in my room, and my heart rate spiked to over 180. I started to feel like I was losing, like I might pass out.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. No kidding.
and I was alone. My wife had actually left to her own doctor's appointment. And so I stumbled outside and managed to make it like two ways down the stairs before I collapsed on the staircase right there. And I managed to call, the EMS. A local bystander was there. I asked them for help. They kind of must have thought I was crazy because they just like stared at me and like left or something.
Oh my gosh.
And luckily, the EMS people showed up, and they got me hooked up to a bunch of monitors and got me in a truck, pushed some medicine into me, and um, sent me to the one of the hospitals here. So this is now going to be like my third hospital entity, right? Because you have different hospital branches. And so I'm there. They do a bunch of EKGs, blood work, and all that. And they're like, we don't know what's wrong with you. And then they tested me for COVID, and I popped positive right there. And they're like,
And how much longer, or sorry, how many days after your initial symptoms was that you tested positive?
I'd say a week and a half.
Okay.
Um, and so they put a heart monitor on me, said go home. They called it supraventricular tachycardia, SVT, is not fun. And I went home, and after that, my heart rate was spiking between 70 to 150 at every 5 to 20 minute interval for a month and a half straight, including when I was sleeping. I would also have like loss of feeling in my my right cheek, my the skin on my right hand. And so going back August 23, I'm back at home. I have another massive episode where my heart rate spikes again, but this time I have a symptom, and I don't know if you've heard of this one. Um, Not a lot of people have, where I had pressure in my carotid arteries, where it felt like my neck was going to explode.
Oh, wow.
And so I had that, my heart rate spiking. I go back to the ER, and I have a terrible time at the ER. These episodes are happening at different intervals. And so I go there, they put me in the waiting room. I start having an episode. They wheel me, somewhere to get these readings. I'm sweating so hard they can't put the leads on. By the time they do, my readings are normal. They wheel me back out to the waiting room. That happens 5 or 6 times until I have a massive episode. And I'm not going to sound like I'm exaggerating, but uh, this episode felt like what I would imagine dying feels like.
Well, yeah, your heart is not supposed to do that.
Yeah,
That's
my
yeah.
heart is spiking. The pressure in my neck it feels like it's going to explode. I'm like slumped over in a wheelchair. The nurses are scrambling to get me. This is definitely traumatic. The nurses are scrambling to get leads on me. Their machines are broken. They bring extra machines. Those machines are broken. They finally get one that works. Episode passes. My readings are normal. They take me to the back to see a cardiologist. The cardiologist sees all my normal tests. I fight for an echocardiogram, and they do it normal. And they're like, yeah, you're normal. They canceled my cardiologist appointment for the next day because they're like, you're normal. There's nothing wrong with you, and sent me home. So there
So
goes.
that's brutal. I
So there,
I'm
there goes my
speechless.
start. Yeah.
Um, so it didn't occur to them to hook you up to the leads and maybe have you lie down in their room and give you an hour or two.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because frankly, they were understaffed
Yeah.
and overfilled.
Yeah.
So if I didn't, meet their criteria to triage me to care in the back, but then starts my fight to try to find a specialist.
Yeah.
And so I finally get out of network specialist for a cardiologist.
What's out of network? Is that just out of your region or?
So out of network meaning your insurance company will agree to pay for certain providers that are in network. So they have agreements with your insurance company.
Gotcha.
Out of network means they don't fall within those agreements. So what that means is typically you're paying out of pocket for those. So I meet this cardiologist. He runs a bunch of tests, diagnoses me with COVID-induced POTS with dysautonomia.
Hmm.
Because my heart was spiking whenever I would stand up, sit down. They did the tilt test and all that. And he was like, you should be good by December. Like, just keep being active and trying to fix your heart rate. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? I have gone through a lot physically in my life. I can, push through this. I can keep working out.
Hmm.
And so that's what I did. And
Yeah.
so, in between all that, they did prescribe some medications that I had a very bad reaction to. I had to go to the ER again.
Oh gosh.
So now we're at number 3, right?
We're going to take a break and remind you with full disclosure that this podcast takes several days to record and create, depending on the health of the host and the guests. I'm relying on the help of others for editing. Any discussion of modalities or treatments are not to be considered medical advice. If you believe you have long COVID, know that you are not alone. Seek out the many Facebook groups for community support, such as Long COVID Canada and COVID Long Haulers Support Group Canada, and please speak to your doctor for medical support.
So this is now beginning of September. I couldn't get an access to any other specialists for like 4 or 5 months in my area. And so my mother, works at a hospital down in Miami, Florida, where I'm originally from. And so she had been seeing how doctors' schedules were down there and found some openings with pulmonologists, neurologists, hematologists. And so I went down there for about 3 weeks in September, and I saw all those folks and got prescribed, a litany of medications and got told, you have to keep moving, you have to keep working, exercising. Okay, I'll do it. So mid-September, this is when my symptoms swapped from the tachycardia to something else. So I'm doing exactly what the doctor said. I'm working out still 3 to 4 times a week, and regardless of these symptoms. And I'm on a treadmill, and my brain kicks in. I was like, I used to be able to run, all the miles.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can just do a light jog, whatever, nothing too crazy. Like for me, it would have been, nothing.
Yeah. A warm-up.
Yeah, warm up. So I started jogging, and I couldn't make it a quarter mile before my lungs kind of seized up, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. And I don't know if I triggered the next like litany of symptoms, but after that, to this day, I still have struggles with dyspnea, shortness of breath, and I'm trying all different types of inhalers. I'm still working out through it, and nothing's working. And I'm seeing specialist after specialist, doctors after doctor. I'm also developing nerve pain that shoots down, my inner right arm, inner right leg, and inner left arm, inner left leg. That is just like it's burning, and it's frankly driving me a little nuts. So I go to one of the COVID recovery clinics here, fought for months to get in there. So we're talking mid-November at this point, and they prescribed me some additional medications for at least the nerve pain. Heart rate spiked to 180 something again. I forgot my wife's name, forgot like who I was for a little bit. It was weird. Ended up going to the ER again, and they were like bad drug interaction. I also want to highlight that up until this point, I have a primary care that I'm seeing to kind of get me to all these specialists. And he's just like anxiety. Like, this is not like we're running all these tests for all these different types of illnesses, and you're coming up normal. So it might be in your head, or it might be primarily anxiety. And I'm just like, no, man, like something's up with me. Some of my blood counts were off too. That were abnormal. Like my hemoglobin's elevated, my ACT is elevated, my ALT for my liver enzymes are elevated.
What about your cholesterol? Is that up at all?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never had issues with cholesterol, and then all of a sudden
Yeah, now you do, right?
triple the normal levels, which apparently is a sign of inflammation and infection. You're fighting something, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had imaging with neurology, MRI, CT scans, blood work with hematology. I'm doing blood work every month, and they can't figure it out. And eventually, I don't know if maybe by the 4th or 5th time I go to the ER, they're having an influx of long COVID patients going there. but I get a handout there talking about a long COVID clinic in the area.
That's
Uh,
something, I guess.
yeah, and I mean the transition from, you know, when I first started going to the ER in August to like November timeframe was completely different in terms of the care I would receive for the most part. They would just, but the difference is, instead of, hey, you have anxiety, it's, hey, you have long COVID and we don't know how to help you.
Mm.
Go to this recovery clinic. So I end up going there, like I said, and they are also kind of struggling to help us. And it was really disheartening because, you build up, all this hope. I mean, you're suffering every single second of every single day. And you get there and they look at you and they're like, we're sorry, we don't know how long this will be, if it'll ever stop. And best we can do is try to manage the symptoms. That's heartbreaking, especially, I gave my 20s to the military and I was gone a lot. I'm happy I did it, I wouldn't take it back for anything, but I was looking forward to starting this new portion of my life where I could frankly have the liberty to do what I wanted. And now I'm restricted by like something I can't even see. And so now we're in December and I'm still working out. It's hard to break. It was something that was just so ingrained in me since I was
Yeah.
young, and it was something I thoroughly enjoy. And one day I'm on a rowing machine because they told me, rowing seems to be something that can be tolerated by COVID patients. And I was like, bet, like if I can do it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And I got on the rower and I was doing it every week, like progressively building up, like you do normally when you're trying to get fit again.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I felt particularly okay. And I was like, you know what? Like, this is a sign. I'm just going to keep going until I don't feel okay. And I rode for 40 minutes. And what happened after was the transition of my symptoms to chronic fatigue and brain fog.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been tired before in my life, from all the stuff I had to do. And this just transcends that. It is all encompassing. You feel like you're dying. Like it's like a fever like fatigue, like that feeling you get right before you get a really bad fever, but it's just intensified. And then you have a pressure in your head, and suddenly you can't think, you can't remember, like you can't problem solve, you can't socialize with people. As you do, it just makes it worse and worse. I also started noticing that any like social, mental, emotional, physical interaction or effort on my part was met with symptoms of some sort. And so it got really bad. It got really bad. I mean, even last week, I went to go see, a doctor on a Monday, and I had such bad brain fog that it almost felt like my brain was rattling in my skull, like there were waves going through it or like buzzing. It felt like there was like a loud radiator next to my right ear, which I have tinnitus from my time in the military, but like this is different. Like this is like if I'm next to a radiator, like there's no other way to describe it. And I could not explain to her, the doctor, what I was feeling, what I was like, what the purpose was for me being there. I felt like completely inept, and that's never happened to me before, And then I had to come back a few days later and bring my wife so that she could like be there and like talk through like what's going on with me and what she had noticed, which is like short-term memory issues where like I'm not remembering things I'm saying. I'm not remembering where I'm putting things. It's just so terrible. And that was last week. And, Monday through Friday, that's what I'm dealing with, going kind of nuts, frankly. Saturday hits, brain fog, fatigue's gone, lung issues return. So now I can't breathe and I have nerve pain again. And so that's the cycle I'm in right now. Um,
What you're describing is pretty much exactly what happened with me in terms of I had all these random symptoms and I kept exercising.
Yeah.
because I was addicted to exercise and I kept, going to the gym, doing 10K hikes on the weekends. And that's when the ME CFS developed. I
Yeah.
don't know if I pushed myself into that prematurely,
Right.
but yeah, I can't even walk to the mailbox now.
Yeah. I walked to go mail something to an old, colleague of mine. Absolutely wrecked me. And it was, a 15-minute walk. Yeah. And then the post-exertional malaise has been lessened because at some point I just stopped working out like a month ago.
I'm glad. I'm sad for you, but I'm glad you're
Yeah,
not doing that anymore.
that sucks because you lose every coping mechanism that you have is completely nullified by this. I mean, you like video games, you like watching TV. Guess what? Brain fog, not gonna let you enjoy that. Like you'll develop a massive headache, you'll develop massive fatigue, and you'll be bedbound for watching, your favorite episode on TV, you know. Um, you like to work out, like I said, that's gone. Um,
Yeah, all the coping mechanisms.
yeah,
The only
but
thing um, I can do now that helps is meditation
yeah.
and a gratitude journal
Yeah.
because you have to really focus on the most minute things.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll go insane.
And that's hard. Yeah. Honestly, there's times where the only thing that I can do is stare at a blank wall and try not to think. And that's frankly, kind of hell. Uh,
Yeah.
especially, I live in downtown Raleigh and I see life from outside my window, hustling, bustling. Nobody's talking about it. Um, and you definitely feel like society's left behind. I mean, even at work, I work within the healthcare industry, and sometimes I'll hear, I can't obviously get into it, but I'll hear certain figures who make important decisions for areas talk about, yeah, no, COVID's over. And I can't say anything, frankly, because I need the health insurance. So, but I mean, that's really debilitating to hear. It's really debilitating to hear.
We can't afford to get it again.
No, we can't.
We'll be back to our interview after a short brain break. The stories of my guests are remarkable in the sense of what they have survived and continue to deal with each and every day. Although unremarkable in that long COVID can happen to anyone, no matter your age or your health. It has happened and it continues to happen. This is an equal opportunity virus. What has the support been like from your family and friends?
So I'm very blessed that I have, a strong support system with my family. I have a very strong support system with my wife and with my friends and all that. Um, obviously at this point I feel like some of that support system is I've used up all the credit for some of for some of my support systems. Um, I can't imagine what this would have been like if I did not have that support system. And I know, I mean, you see it with other long haulers saying that they frankly don't have anybody or they have people in their family that don't believe it's real or their spouse just thinks they're being lazy or something. And man, bless those people because that's hard. That's hard. I can't imagine that.
Mm-hmm. What is a typical day like for you now?
So I wake up and frankly, I let my body wake up naturally. I don't put alarms or anything. At this point, I'm like fully remote. Thankfully, my boss has been, I mean, I'd be unemployed if it wasn't for him. Like, God bless him. Has been so
That's
supportive.
great.
Um, but I wake up naturally, and the first thing I do is that there's this app called Visible.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a long COVID app, and it takes a reading, and then based off your like recent symptoms and your and certain other metrics, it tells you like your pacing level, or like how much you should be able to exert yourself today before you crash. And so I do that. Then I drink a whole, tub of electrolytes, and I take, some medicine and vitamins that I got from, some research article. Before eating, I eat, take a bunch of other medication after eating. And then depending on how I feel for the day, frankly, kind of sit for a good bit. And I save my energy to go to these appointments, go to my pulmonary rehab, go to my acupuncture, go to my Tai Chi, go to whatever. Um, and if I feel good enough, maybe I'll play some video games, watch some shows with my wife. Every now and then, every other week, maybe I'll go see a friend or do something like that. But that's gotten very rare. Mm, and that's about it. Like, it,
So very
yeah.
different,
And then just
very different from before.
yeah. Before I used to wake up, even I thought I'd never do this when I left the military because you have to wake up so early and you go like running in the morning and all this stuff. But when I got out of the military, I was like, that's a great time to get my
Yeah.
workout in. So I would wake up at like 5 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning. I'd go, work out, um, and then I'd go to work. And then after work, I'd go out with my friends, or I would, play, video games, or I would, make plans to go out on the weekend, go hike a national park, or I'd I'd go fly to another country, or go fly to another state and go visit, one of my friends that I made at some point in my life. And I mean, I made it a point when I got out of the military to travel as much as I could, because you do travel a lot in the military, but it's not to where you obviously want to go, and your work doesn't allow very much for you to like enjoy wherever you're
Mhm.
at. Um, and so I left the military, and I went, a month abroad in Europe, and I was planning to do that every year, a month abroad in Europe last year. This year was going to be Asia, the next year was going to be some other, sector of the world. And that was something I definitely look forward to. And now, frankly, I wonder if I could make, the flight. Um, and sorry, my brain fog is kicking in a little bit because I forgot the question.
That's okay. You answered my question. Anything more? And
Okay, good.
it was about your typical day. Anything more to say about that?
Yeah.
No.
No, I go to sleep relatively early now, and that's it. And
Yeah.
nope, my life is very boring and mundane now.
Yeah. Sleep is essential.
Yeah.
What has having this illness cost you?
Hmm. So I think because I've had a lot of time to obviously like think about all this. And your head definitely goes to some very dark places when you're chronically ill. You start to question, like, frankly, why bother being alive?
Mhm.
To be honest, if it's just for the sake of, making other people happy that I exist, but I'm not existing around them anymore, you can go down some really bad areas. I definitely have. I think you grieve what you once were, and grief is definitely the best way to describe it. Um, it's like a sorrow that like like a death, like you grieve somebody who died. It's like you grieve your previous self for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
It's very heavy.
yeah, yeah. You have anxieties about the future for sure, because I mean, you have all these handicaps now, and you don't know where you're gonna be. Um, Catastrophizing is something that is something that is very normal when you're dealing with a chronic illness, because you're just like, okay, well, you're reading all these articles that say just the most horrible things about this illness, and there's no viable treatments, and you're not getting any better, and you feel like every facet of your life is falling apart. And so you start to wonder, like, okay, this sucks. I'm not like obviously not dying right now, even though I kind of feel like I am, but is this going to kill me later? Like, am I going to
Mhm.
develop some condition later in the future that just takes me out? You know, I and frankly, we don't know that, and I've just grown to accept that as as something I shouldn't think about because frankly, there's no control we have over that. So, um,
Yeah, there's so much uncertainty because
yeah,
we don't know the future.
yeah, I think, and I'm still in the process of doing it because it's definitely hard. I'm very stubborn in terms of I love working out, you know, and I miss it so much. Uh,
Hmm.
I love being able to go out with my friends. I love being able to travel. I love being able to go to work and interact with people normally and work hard if the day requires it. You know, I liked not having restrictions on my life that I couldn't push through because a lot of things in life you can just push through. Like, you're tired in the morning, you don't feel like you want to get up and go work out. Well, you can push through that. You can get out there and start moving. Um, I miss being able to learn like I used to or use my mind. Um, I'm still refusing to let this sideline my aspirations. Um, I applied to go to graduate school. I've been prepping for this since last February. Um, I applied and I worked my, butt off throughout the whole year. And now this month is when I find out what schools I get into. And I'm definitely afraid of, I mean, can I do it? I know I could do it before, but am I able to actually do it? Or if I go and I spend, X amount of hours in a classroom, is it going to sideline me or make my condition worse? Um,
I
I'm
think
still going to do it.
I think you can if you pace. You pace yourself. I think the ultimate lesson in this is learning that we have to slow down and we can't push through.
Yeah.
And that's the toughest lesson for people like us that are obsessed with exercise and
Yeah.
overachieving. And yeah, it's a tough place to be in.
Yeah. I think if anything from this whole experience, I would like, which you're doing, obviously, I would like more people to know about this and like demand or request or inspire some sort of, effort to find treatments for it, um, for people like us. I'm actually going to be going to a long haul awareness demonstration in DC on March 15th.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I
Um,
wish I could go to that.
yeah, I'll take pictures for you.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's the one thing that, I've been trying to rally the troops for lack of a better word, but um it's hard for us to gather
it is. It absolutely is.
because we can't, and it's hard for us to be visible
Yeah, it's so easy
because
for us to
we're
just,
all we're all dealing with this in the privacy of our own homes, and we can't gather a huge group of us and have protests. So I hope,
and we look normal.
and we look normal, exactly. So
Perfect.
I hope there's a good turnout.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think one of the major points I want to drive and why I came on this podcast was I used to also be of the school of thought that this only affected people who were frankly older,
Hmm.
women,
Hmm.
out of shape, all those comorbidities they talked about. And I was peak physical fitness. I'd never been like more physically strong in my entire life when I got this.
Same.
Like, and from one month to the next, you're sidelined, and you don't know if you're ever going to get it back. And so it's very easy for people to look at folks who are long hauling and be like, well, that sucks. I have sympathy for you and just go along your way. Frankly, it's kind of funny in a dark way because one of my best friends, his sister, was a nurse for a long haul clinic and had told me about long hauling. I want to say in like 2022, right before I knew what long hauling was,
Mm-hmm.
and like early 2022. And I remember being that person and being like, wow, that's terrible. And then just moving on with my life. And look where I am now. Um, and frankly, people are going to keep getting sick with COVID. It's a virus, just like the flu. And I would hate for there to be such a lack of awareness for this illness that people like us, you know, throughout the years, because more people are going to get this,
Mm-hmm.
will continue to have no access to viable care, will continue to spend tens of thousands of dollars out of their, personal money, at least in the US, right? I'm 13,000 out of pocket now, and that's just because I use the Veterans Administration benefits for a lot of my services. Like that if it wasn't for that, it could easily be another 10 or 20. Um, without all that together, and you're just they'll just be left out. You know, there's just going to be they're going to be stuck in the same vicious cycle of emergency room primary care specialist until they give up going. Like you couldn't drag me to a hospital now unless I'm like unconscious. I frankly refuse to go
Mm-hmm. I don't
because
blame you.
it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Emergency rooms are not equipped for this, frankly. Primary cares don't a lot of them don't have the knowledge of what long COVID is. Um, and 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 then you go to a specialist and they frankly can't help you after waiting months. You're in there for an hour, they say sorry, and then it's on to the next person, and the cycle continues. And that's absolutely dreadful. Dreadful, dreadful.
Yeah, I think awareness is essential
Yeah.
because they have stopped counting us. In fact, I don't even think they started counting us.
Yeah.
Um, and so we don't have accurate numbers. If we don't have accurate numbers, how do we lobby for treatment?
And that is actually the point that I was trying to think of, except I lost it and you brought it back. So that I I will go to these clinics and I ask, what are you reporting this as? Because I work in the healthcare industry, so I understand how important metrics are. And they'll tell me, we're reporting it as POTS or we're reporting it as something else. And I'm like, no, this is long COVID. And so in the on the front end for people like us, a lot of us are gaslit or don't have access to care to the point where we even get to a point where we're getting treated for the long COVID, right? And so a lot of folks give up before they even get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so those people are not counted in the metrics. And then you finally do get access to some form of care, and they don't have a protocol for you because this is so new. And so what they do, they look at what tools they have, some other protocol for your symptoms, like the POTS protocol or some cardiovascular protocol or some pulmonary protocol, and they put you on it and report that metric up. And so now, guess what? You're invincible. Invisible, definitely not
Invisible.
invincible. Yeah, invisible. Um, and I think I ask every healthcare provider that I've interacted with. I've seen 25 providers in 2 states, 8 emergency room visits, 3 by EMS. I asked every single provider I've been with, what's your experience with long COVID? And I get a mix of what's long COVID. I get a mix of, oh yeah, we've seen an influx of it, or oh yeah, I do know X person in my life who has it. It sucks, and that's it. They don't know. Like there's just
And we're
such
four
lack.
years into this.
Yeah, and unfortunately, and I'm not gonna get political about this. All I'm gonna say is that this is not a politics issue.
No.
This is a human issue. This is a virus. I don't care where it came from. I don't care how you get long hauling, whether it's from the virus itself or from some other method. I don't care. The fact of the matter is that long hauling exists. People are going to continue to become long haulers. They're going to continue to have no ability to get care for themselves. And the cycle is going to continue, unfortunately, until some big reaction happens, some big movement, or frankly, and this is the only possible way I can foresee it, enough people know and care about it and believe it and are scared for themselves and their family members to have to deal with that situation and push for funding of adequate research to solve this problem. If this killed you, you know, publicly, I can't even say if it killed you because COVID absolutely can kill people. But unless there was like a POW up on the streets that people can visually see, I don't feel like it's gonna get the attention it deserves, you know?
Yeah, and that's why I want to depoliticize the illness. I'm
Yeah,
not focusing on masks. I'm not focusing on vaccines
exactly. I don't
in
care if it's
my
got it or not. Like,
yeah.
doesn't
It,
matter.
in my podcast, I want to focus on the illness
Yes.
because it's real, it's happening, it continues to happen. And I hate how, as soon as I say the two words long COVID, people gloss over
Yep.
and they start talking about masks and vaccines.
Yeah, like, are you gonna force me to do this? Or you
Yeah,
I don't care. Like
you do what you want to do, but
you
I'm going
want
to give you the full information of this illness.
yes, exactly. Exactly.
What do you wish people knew about your long COVID experience? You kind of talked about that.
Yeah, I would, yeah, frankly, to sum it up, it's going to be like, look at who I was, right? An athlete, a vet, you know, I used to do all this intense, mentally difficult stuff. And this is the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with mentally. And if it could happen to me, it can happen to you, it can happen to your parents, your kids, your friends, and you do not want to be in this situation. Um, I hope nobody else, frankly, ever gets in this situation, although it's not realistic. And I would frankly like people to just, if you don't want to do something about it, at least talk about it. At least post something on your social media or talk to somebody and say, hi, I have a friend or I heard a podcast so that I don't have to go out on the street and be healed over and somebody asks if I'm okay and I'm saying, yeah, man, sorry, I just have long COVID. And they say, what's that? Never heard of it. So that would be the one takeaway.
Last question.
Yeah.
What have you learned about yourself through all of this?
Um, well, I knew I was mentally strong before, to some degree, but I learned that everybody has their limits, in terms of what they can take. And frankly, I'm trying, at least recently, to become more positive in terms of how I view the world and just be grateful for those times where I feel relatively normal. Like right now, you couldn't tell, but I feel like I can't breathe. But um, you know what I don't have? I don't have uh, extreme fatigue, you know. I don't have the nerve pain right now. I'm gonna knock on wood somewhere. Um, and so I think I've learned that I need to be more positive and I need to change my perspective on how I'm living my life because since this has started, at least the second time, right? The first time I got COVID was not very intensive. Since this has started, I stopped living, and while I can't live life the way I did before, I can live it in some way and to the best of my abilities. And frankly, that's all I can do. And I feel like chronic illness is like the seven stages of, death. You grieve, you pass. Eventually, you have to reach the acceptance stage, or you just be miserable forever,
Spinning
or
your wheels.
spinning your wheels. I still struggle through it. Obviously, there are days where like I'm not doing too hot, but I think for the most part, at least, as of recently, as of like this week recently, I've made a decision that I'm gonna just push through, and if it resolves itself, I'm still gonna be an advocate for long COVID. And if it doesn't resolve itself, well, I'm gonna figure something else. I'm gonna figure something out with my life.
Yeah,
That's
I
it.
don't think it's a coincidence that it seems to have affected people that are stubborn and resilient and resourceful. I think
Yeah.
there's a reason for
Well,
that. Thank you so much for joining me today and being willing to share your story. And let's hope that this helps others to hear it.
thank you so much. I appreciate you for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you to Craig Rogers for writing and recording this amazing theme music. Thank you for listening. Please make sure to follow Voices of Long COVID on our Instagram, TikTok, X, and YouTube accounts. New episodes drop every Wednesday wherever you listen to podcasts. Until then, stay safe and stay informed.